Hello, everybody. Hello, and thank you very, very much for joining us for this evening. My name is Ian Harkins, and I've got with me my colleague of many, many years, Chelsea Benoit. Yeah, hello. I would just want to say we're going to throw up a poll at the very beginning here. We would love to get a sense about who you are, why it is you've joined us, how we can best serve your needs. Just say I'm gonna vamp for a little bit just to let some other people come in and to give you a little bit of background about us as well. First thing, I'm so sorry. I'm absolutely filled with cold at the moment. I have a 4-year-old who spends way too much time around other 4-year-olds, and it's just not a good situation then to invite her back into my home, and yet I do it anyway. So excuse me. But my name is Ian Harkins. I've been working with Apple Ruth for over a decade now. And I've been working that entire time with the APs as well. I love doing the APs like a genuine nerd, and I love speaking about them. And I'm very, very eager to share what I can and hopefully help you. I have a specialty in the history APs, but I've also done the English APs and some of the language APs, the French and the Spanish. Chelsea, why don't you take it away as well?
Hi, I'm Chelsea. I have been with Appleruth for almost a decade, and I also have experience with the APs. My area is a little bit more on the STEM side, particularly AP Bio, a little bit of AP Chem.
So between the both of us, I hope that we can answer questions both big and small. The way that this is going to work is we are going to run through some collected, frequently asked questions that'll prompt us to talk about what we want. Ideally, what this is supposed to be is for people who are just starting their journeys with the APs, or have maybe had some experience with the APs but want greater clarification. This can be for parents, this can be for students, one and all. And we will certainly save time for questions at the end. Throw them up in the chat, please, please. And if we don't answer them during, I'll either find a moment to type an answer, or what I would love to do is save it for discussion at the very end. So welcome to this evening of prepping for success in the APs. Let's get started. I'd love to tell you a little bit about us first. We are Apple Ruth. We believe wholeheartedly that when you change students' self-beliefs, you can change their lives. We do that through the three pillars of academic tutoring, test prep, and executive functioning coaching. And is that central pillar, test prep, that brings us to tonight. This is a very, very common first question that we get. Help, I'm not taking enough APs, or I'm taking too many APs. Now what? I feel you. It is a tough journey just to start plotting out how many to take, when to take them, as in which years, whether the ones that you are taking are appropriate. So let me start by busting some myths. I think that too many people can get caught up into hearing that the median number of APs that people can take is now between 10 and 12, and that is the expectation for colleges and universities. That is not a helpful way of thinking about things. The APs stand for Advanced Placement Courses, and they are supposed to be tests that bring high schoolers up to a college level equivalent for whatever course that it is. So you want to show that you have exhibited some interest in this topic, and presumably that it is something that you wish to continue to study or to focus in come college. The reason that you have done all of this work is so that you can place out of maybe an introductory level once you start getting into university, and you can accelerate your program when you're in university. That's the gist of it. Though the SAT and the ACT will continue to be the most prominent and highest weighted standardized test that high schoolers are going to take for university consideration. The APs do play a part in that. Now, this all said, the APs are also a manifestation, or rather, which APs you take are a manifestation of what it is your high school has offered. Usually, these are the terminal classes in certain subjects that students can achieve in high school. So, what colleges do want to see, colleges are remarkably good at finding out this kind of information. They want to see that you took advantage of the courses that were offered to you. Meaning, if your high school had only 8 AP courses that they offered, and you took 6, for instance, that's still excellent. That shows a commitment given the levels that you were given. If your school offers 15 and you took 6, that perhaps tells a different story, or it can tell a specific story if you want to weave that into the narrative that you tell in your application about why it is you focused on these. The point is, APs should not just be taken as supplements for the SAT and ACT. They're not the replacement for the erstwhile SAT subject tests that are now retired, that some of you may have heard of from once upon a year. These are supposed to demonstrate to colleges and universities what it is that you yourself are interested in, and to give them a kind of hint about what it is that you would like to study once you get to college. It does not mean that you have to stick to it once you get there. I focused a lot on the languages back in the day, and I used those to get in. I took the Calc BC test, for goodness sake, and I was given enough credit that I could graduate a semester early. But the APs that I took wound up having nothing to do with my major. I turned out to be a political science and history major. So go figure. Chelsea, am I somewhere on the mark here? I mean, I know you and I broadly agree on this, but I'd love to bring you in because I know you work a lot in STEM, and STEM has its own sort of demons to it when deciding which ones to take.
Yes, but I think it's along the same lines kind of what you said, is that this is a way to demonstrate interest in particular things, and a focus in STEM APs can demonstrate an intent to follow that particular path. So if you're, for example, looking to go into a pre-med program, having taken the like AP Bio and the AP Chem, or stats or some other like similar AP tests like that, that are STEM related, can demonstrate some commitment to that particular path, and also potentially provide credit for some of those uh, like early college courses. I think it's also important to like reflect on what you said about like this being part of the narrative that you are trying to craft about yourself for college applications. The AP exams are just like one part of that narrative.
Yeah.
Their colleges are looking at a lot of different things, and the AP scores are only like a part of what might make you an interesting candidate to a college. So there's going to be like other extracurricular activities, the essays that you write for your application. And so, when you're thinking about like, the number of APs that you're, looking to take, and, particularly in any one given year of high school, you also want to think about making sure that you're, balancing your time to include these other things that are helping to build the narrative about you.
Amen.
If you don't want to spend like so much time on APs that you're neglecting these other things that make you stand out from like other potential applicants. Like, while your goal is certainly to do well on the AP test, you want to make sure you're being realistic about how many of them you can like fit in, and like still do well and still, maintain, these other activities that are, are part of who you are.
Amen, Chelsea. I mean, one of the things that I'm starting now to work on with anybody that I, excuse me, that I'm working on for the APs with, if somebody approaches me now, like October, November time, the conversation has to be okay. You're choosing to take this many APs, but I notice here you're also on the traveling lacrosse team, and that's a spring sport. Are you actually going to have time to do this? Are you going to be able to devote yourself to this? And when many students sit down, like the answer is no, because indeed, like you don't want to surrender those things that have made you special, that you have devoted yourself to, and a fourth, fifth, sixth AP is not worth sacrificing that. Um, so it is worth one of the things that people can do now. It is worth thinking about how best to maximize one's time now so that one can actually be available in March, April, early May, when the studying and the sitting of these inevitably ramps up. So that's an incredibly important point that Chelsea just said that I would love everybody to walk away with as well. I mean, we are, though we are not college counselors, there is no trade secret here that these are meant to be ingredients in a more complete picture of you. These cannot stand by themselves as those. All right. So let's say we have taken we've started taking this, we've made the commitment, and now, especially in the second semester, we want to start thinking about this. We've made the decision, we've pulled the trigger, we're taking the AP class, we're going to take the AP test. How do I know if my AP class is on target for the exam? Chelsea, that's a great question. How do we know?
Well, so there are some resources that you can draw from. My favorite resource that I point every single one of my students towards is the course and exam description. So, College Board's website, for every single one of its AP classes, they have a PDF document, the course and exam description for that particular AP class, which is a very detailed description of all of the different units that the course should cover. It's very much like a syllabus. And so it'll show students, here's everything that the course should be covering for this particular test. And so students are able to use that as just sort of a resource to see, like, okay, how far through all these topics are we? And like, does it look like we're on track to, you know, get through all of them by the time the actual AP test, comes around?
Which, by the way, and yes, like Google anything like AP, it, insert course here, course exam guide, and it will come up. They're not shy about sharing this. The College Board, the company that runs the SATs, they want students, they want teachers to see this. It could be, by the way, I mean, Chelsea, I find this for the histories as well, that teachers don't always follow the course linearly, and that's fine, that's commendable. We want that. We want teachers to be able to teach in a way that makes sense to them, in a way that excites them. So don't be afraid if it's not chapter and verse following everything that the course exam has said, but it can give us a very clear picture, right? The
Right.
AP science is like that as
AP
well, right?
Sciences, so like, just in my experience, I think AP Bio more often than not tends to follow the order in the course and exam description because it builds off of itself very well. But for it's not always the case for all the STEM classes. I'm actually working with an AP Chem student right now whose class is very much taking the different units in an order that is like not consistent with the course and exam description. They're still covering everything, just you know, switching up the order in which they tackle particular units. So in that case, it's I think a little bit more of a matter of trying to assess like, okay, based on how many of the units we have covered at this point in the year, does it feel like we're on pace to, hit everything?
Now, something that you can also consider is, especially come February, March, maybe if you're confident about it, April, but that doesn't leave that much time. Most AP courses are wrapping up by the end of March, beginning of April. And it is a good time as well to backtrack and make sure, like, oh, do I remember all these things about units 1 and 2? You can feel free, and I think your first point of contact should be your teacher. People who teach these AP courses are by and large nerds like us, and they're doing it because they do genuinely like their course. So I think the course exam description is a lovely thing. I would also highly, highly encourage parents and teachers, parents and students, excuse me, alike, to reach out to the teacher and just say, like, hey, are we on course to finish this? There was an entire week of snow days in January. Is this impacted something, for instance? Or do we will we have an opportunity to go through and revise? Are we going to finish early, do you think? So how do you know? You can have a look yourself on the course exam description. You can ask your teacher. I think those are two marvelous, marvelous resources. A third thing that you can possibly do, if you ever want to do, is you can ask one of us. Like, we are very, very happy to evaluate. We've worked with students who've worked with many different teachers, and we can tell where somebody is jumping around in the course at points, certainly in the second semester. And we can certainly help guide you if you ever needed somebody to just steer the ship a little bit more. Once we're in the second semester, and once we're getting down to crunch time, how should I plan out my study program? Excellent question. And this one we get quite a bit. So, like I say, the exams themselves are split between the first 2 weeks of May. There are some people who have certain other test dates, so let's say it runs through May. To optimize a study program, in the second semester is when you should start thinking about preparing in earnest for the exam. And as you go about this, there are two things simultaneously that I'm very keen to impress upon students that they do. There's two prongs you have to do equally. The first is the content. We talked about in the last slide, ways of figuring out, am I indeed getting to the end of the program? Will we finish out Unit 9? Will we have enough time to go back and have a look at Unit 1? That's something that you can start doing in February, honestly, maybe even March time. There is a second prong that I want students to be aware of when they think about their study program. Every single one of the tests has their own particular way of phrasing their questions, formatting their test. Again, speaking about the histories, which I'm familiar with, there'll be a classic multiple choice section, although even it has its idiosyncrasies. But then there is a document-based question. You're expected to be able to digest 7 documents and answer something about them. There are short answers, there is a long answer, and there are a certain set of points that you're supposed to be able to earn for each of your answers. How do you earn those points, for instance? I mean, even in the languages ones, yes, there's the classic multiple choice based on reading passages, and then there's a funny thing for the French and Spanish. There's an email that you're supposed to respond to, and you're supposed to know how to write emails in a foreign language. How strange and specific is that? So the other question that you want to start to ask yourselves, which some teachers in schools are more thorough with than others, is do you feel familiar? Do you feel confident with the formatting? Do you understand what it is that is expected of you? Do you know how to maximize those points? Chelsea, how do we? What's the timing for doing all of that? And based on students who are more or less confident as well, how do you start to recommend people go about their programs?
Yeah, so I think that that's a good point you bring up as to how confident a student is. Um, I think that probably like once you start getting into the new year is a good time to try to, you know, gauge for yourself, how good do you feel about the material that you covered in the first part of the year? Did you feel like that went really well and you know, aced all of the tests and you still feel like you have a good memory for the content? Or do you feel like it maybe didn't go as well as you were hoping, and you're going to need to, do more review on things that were giving you trouble? It's like if you find yourself on the side of, I feel like there were some units that were giving me a really hard time, you're going to want to plan that in to sort of your study process for like I'm going to want to make sure that I'm taking a little bit of extra time to review the older materials. Um, I think definitely like I guess we're kind of getting like towards the end of the first part of the school year, which should have been mostly about learning the that content and maybe starting to familiarize yourself with the exam question style, because hopefully AP teachers have been giving their assessments in this a similar style as their particular AP exam. um, but as you're, starting to get into the next semester, yeah, probably in the like, depending on your comfort level, I think can make a difference in exactly when you start to study. If you're feeling a little iffy about it, about how that first semester went, probably better to start reviewing content sooner rather than later, especially for something like AP Bio, whereas there's just a real absolute ton of material that you need to know for that particular test. But if that was your subject and you aced everything and you're like really confident with it, then maybe like March is a little bit more when you should start reviewing and start like really studying and practicing for the AP test itself.
Yeah, the AP Bio scares me. Uh, and Chelsea, can I ask you, like, especially for the AP Bio, a uh, which is a content-heavy test, if part of a student study program does involve a tutor, like when do you like to be brought in for things, and what does it matter as well, like whether you are doing content review, especially maybe for older material or material that a student doesn't maybe feel as confident about versus what we talked about with formatting particulars.
Right. Yeah. So I think that like if content review is what you were looking for, then like bringing me in earlier rather than later is probably better to have more time to review like older material. In fact, like usually when like the earlier that I start with students, it tends to be like more because they are looking for like content help with the class itself. If it's April and you are needing to review the entire like first 4 units of AP Bio, I like you can bring me in, but it's not gonna, necessarily do a whole lot of good at that point. Whereas if you're comfortable with the content and all you're looking for is just like, okay, I want to make sure that I fully understand what to expect on the test. I want to make sure that I have like some guidance on how I need to be like, phrasing the answers to my free response questions, then, bringing me in the like the March to April like
Yeah.
range would be totally fine.
Yeah, I feel for the histories as well. Like somebody who wants help with content can bring me in as soon as I am working with students on the AP Euro now. I love it. But I will get brought in as well around January, February, and then those around March, April are, as Chelsea says, looking for more help on, okay, now I know the stuff or I feel comfortable with it. I know how to review it myself. How can I start to practice the test questions? Yeah. But anyway, what I'd love to leave you with is those two things of figuring out both content and the test formatting. When should I start reviewing with a tutor on my own? Spoiler alert, I sort of covered this, but um, let's talk about reviewing on your own and ways to review on your own. Chelsea absolutely hit on the course exam descriptions. There are other things that you can do out there, and there are other really good times to bring them in. Another thing I'd love to highlight, especially if you're trying to do this yourself, every one of these tests has another absolutely wonderful resource. They put sometimes two per year past tests up on the College Board website. And you are able to go and have a look yourself at what the past questions were. And they'll even give some sample answers. It's marvelous stuff. It's an absolute treasure trove. And again, like, depending on what it is you would like, these can be brilliant to do. Now, I think some of the full multiple choice practices, that would be very challenging to do now for obvious reasons. We haven't gotten through all of the material. But once we're in, say, there are 9 units, once we're up to or through unit 8, I think that is a really good time to start injecting in some of these longer, all course encompassing multiple choice questions. And that usually comes in and around March. I think March is a great time to start bringing in a tutor. It's a great time to start buying other books. We're particularly fond of the Barron's brand books. There are also some that we have. We've got a trove of sample questions to ourselves. There are ones that are publicly available. But once you start hitting March, that I think is when, for nearly all of these that we do, that it's a really good time to start bringing in some kind of review. It can be with a tutor, it can be with your teacher. Like I said, I love referencing, I love sending students back to their teachers. It can be with peers in your class. But March is a very, very good time to start doing all of this. Especially if the goal is to review all of the content and remember, as Chelsea said, all of that stuff from units 1 and 2. Chelsea, do you find that March is still a really optimal time period, especially as we wind down with new material and we're looking to on how to integrate it all and fit it all together?
Yeah, I think that like March is definitely a good time to certainly be like trying a practice test, while College Board mostly focuses on making like the free responses available. It's a little bit not as good of a resource for a full practice test, but as you mentioned, there are like practice books like Barron's, Princeton Review, places where you can get those practice tests to do. And I think it is important to keep in mind that even in March you probably still haven't covered everything. There's probably still like a good unit to a unit and a half that you haven't
Mhm.
made it through yet. So when you're taking the practice test, it is okay if you run into some questions that you don't know the answer to yet because you haven't gotten to that unit. You'll know that you're going to be getting to that information. What you really more want to be focusing on is like, what is the stuff from the previous units that I am missing? So making sure that you're like identifying here's what I remember versus here's what I need to review. Because, again, a lot of information in AP Bio specifically. So knowing what you need to review and being able to like really target that for a study plan over the course of like March and April is really useful. And then, of course, after having some time to study, potentially doing like another practice test, some weeks later to see how you've improved.
There again, there's just so much material on the AP Bio. There is on the histories as well. The AP Modern is like 800, world history is like 800 years. But yeah, there is just an awful lot on the AP Bio. Ah, bless. All right. What are AP graders looking for? I love this question. What are they looking for? Um, Love, meaning, purpose. No, I'm kidding. So um, we've had the opportunity to do some interviews with genuine AP graders, and they are some of the most informative, wonderful things. And there's a couple of things from doing those that I'd really love to highlight. I mean, these are people who, like, again, talk about people who love their subject. They fly these people out to some massive gymnasium or conference center, usually somewhere geographically located centrally in the country. The people that I was talking to had all been flown to Kansas City come June, come the summer, so that they could all sit there and grade together. Um, Usually, this is applied to the free response. Most all of the APs will have some kind of written portion, and the written portion counts for a whopping percentage of whatever test it is that you're taking. And it's tough to know, like, what are the AP graders looking for, I suppose. The good news is they don't make it a secret. Again, these resources that we have mentioned, particularly the past tests, the retired tests from past years, they will give sample answers to those. And they have it so that they'll explain rather thoroughly. They'll give you what students said for each of these. They'll give a high, a medium, and a low score, and they'll walk through pretty thoroughly and explain why students earned each one of these points. Chelsea, do you want to, is there anything that you want to talk about sort of more thoroughly about when I talk about points, like what is it exactly I mean? I've sort of hinted at this, but what
Yeah, well,
do,
one thing that I can say that like a lot of the AP tests do, and just referring back again to the course and exam description, is the free response questions will have what they call task verbs in them. And these are basically like words in the question that are in bold that tell you what you need to do in order to get points for this particular answer. You need to describe this particular thing. You need to predict an outcome and justify it, or you need to make it like calculate some particular thing. And you can find, if your test has task verbs, you can look at the like towards the end of the course and exam description where it's going into detail about the free response format. You can find a list of here are the task verbs that will appear on this particular exam, and here is like if you see this word, here's what it means they want you to do. So you can get a sense for like, okay, if they say describe or identify, then that means that I can just give a very basic answer. I'm just being asked to provide like some specific detail versus if they say I need to like support or, provide reasoning or justify something, then I need to go into more detail about the like the how and the why behind it. There needs to be some like clear chain of reasoning that I'm providing for my particular answer. And, those are going to be the things that you get points for. And, in addition to the sample, responses that Ian mentioned, all of the like FRQs that College Board makes available on their website, also they provide this like just what the rubrics are. for like here's what like the correct answer to this question was, or it's in some cases like there might be like more than one acceptable answer, provided that it is appropriately justified. So there's like really great resources for the free response questions in particular, that you can look at and use to just you know enhance your study plan.
Chelsea, you've spoken as well, like super eloquently in the past about like how even for the AP Bio, and it gets worse for the AP Histories, I can tell everybody now, but it's not like there is a right answer that they're after.
It depends. Like so for the AP Bio, I would say that like there there is a right answer most of the time, but it's not like they're asking like really specifically detailed questions about like some random thing that occurs in biology. Like they may bring up like a process that seems really random, like this particular metabolic process that produces this enzyme that causes like root hair growth in plants, and you'll look at that and go, well, I never learned about this in my AP bio class, and that's okay because they're really all about like the application and the connections between big ideas, and all they're wanting you to do is like take that information and figure out where it fits into the larger units that you covered, and what are the key concepts that can be applied to this information, or that you see like being used in this scenario. So it is, well there is often a right answer. It's it's not it's not like a super heavily like rote memorization of the little details sort of a test. Yes, there's going to be like there are going to be some key details that you need to know, but they have moved very heavily into just application of key concepts.
Thank you. That is what I was trying to prompt you to do because I've found it fascinating. It gets the fact that that's on the AP stems makes it even worse that it's on the AP histories. Like to bring people down a rabbit hole. There's one past AP European history test that had a DBQ. The DBQ, the document-based question, is one of the ones that you can earn the most points for, and it takes the longest. And this one, again, the course exam description is long and deep and wide. And the question was about specifically the silver trade in Spain in this narrow band of the 1600s. I'm sure if you went back and looked at the course exam description, maybe the silver trade like, gets a footnote to it. And the point is not to come in and say, well, good thing I know all about the silver trade. I'm ready. Let's go. They are anticipating that the silver trade is maybe one of the more abstruse, there's my vocab word for the day, but one of the lesser known, shall we say, parts of the course. And the goal is not for you to come out with all of these factoids about the silver trade in Spain in the 1600s. It is more to connect it to, as Chelsea very much said, the general principles of here's what was going on in Spain in this half of the 17th century. Here's what else was going on around Europe. Here's what they might have been competing with. It's also a test that allows you to think about digesting, okay, if I know enough, I can be presented with a document from anywhere and go like, oh, okay, like here's what they're considering, here's what they're dealing with. I can fit it into a larger context. That is very often what AP graders are looking for. So don't sit there stunned in silence that, oh my God, I don't know anything about the silver trade in Spain in the early 1600s. That's not the goal. The goal is to say, what else have you learned? What more can you integrate? Right. So Thank you so much for bearing with us. I'm going to try to save about 15 minutes for any questions and answers that we might have, if there are any out there. There's one more poll that we're going to throw up again. We love getting a sense of who people are who join us for these, how best we can support you, what it is that you're looking for, and if the conversation can go any further. If anybody here is looking for personalized coaching, we are only too happy to help. It's what we do, it's a raison d'etre. And so please feel free to scan the QR code or call the number below, visit us on appleroofs.com. It would be an absolute pleasure to get to speak with you. So beyond that, if there are any questions, please feel free to throw them up into the chat. At the moment, there aren't, though, so we must have done a tremendously, there's one. But otherwise, we must have done a tremendously good job. Here's a great question. So, how would you go about self-studying for APs if your school does not offer them? My school only offers ATs, which doesn't follow the curriculum exactly. Okay, so yes, you're not alone. Either there's a lot of students will look to take the AP class, um, even though their terminal class is perhaps an honors, or maybe like Chelsea, do you ever work with IB students as well, or it's like a different system
I
altogether?
was an IB student.
You were an IB student? Oh my
Yes,
goodness.
and so I think our classes like weren't technically AP classes, but we did like they did have us take the AP tests at the end of the year anyway.
Okay. But then one thing that you might have experienced that I feel like a lot of similar students in similar positions of mine do is that there's much less familiarity um, with the formats of the test, like all of the particulars that we've talked about. How do you maximize? Like, what's that rubric that Chelsea was referring to earlier? Like, those are really challenging, right?
The Oh yeah, the like the FRQs, like if you just like
Yeah,
haven't like yeah, I think that like once you get sort of a feel for what they're looking for and if you like go in and like look at the question and like see kind of what they're expecting for the response, um, then like the more you do, the like the easier it will become because there are I think just like some very key patterns in the way that they set up the questions. Um, but I think that like if your school's not offering an AP and so therefore like yeah, the teacher for the class isn't giving you practice that is in line with like what the AP test is going to look like at the very minimum you should be checking out the like the available practice that is on the College Board website for the FRQs, the very like the few multiple choice questions that they have usually at the end of the course and exam description or on the Blue Book app has the
yeah.
same questions from the course and exam description available as like AP practice. So looking at those just as a reference for like what the exam is going to look like, using the course and exam description and kind of like cross-referencing it with your own syllabus to see here's what the AP test might cover that my class won't. And then sourcing additional like resources like either working with a tutor or getting a practice book in order to like brush up on that particular material.
Amen. So if you are a student who's, in honors, advanced topic, IBs, like by and large, the topics covered are the same. I mean, after all, they are supposed to cover introductory level college courses, and those have a kind of set uniformity to them, a kind of expectation to them. So they're going to deviate terribly from that. But I think that the main concern for me would be what we were talking about earlier, that second portion of presumably a lot of students who are taking AP specific classes are, as Chelsea's saying, studying and their assessments are in those formats. So maybe there's a little bit more to do with looking at the formatting of the APs. One thing I will say that that you made me think of, there are a couple of APs that, funnily enough, are designed for self study. The AP government ones come to mind, both the US one and the comparative one. They're both either meant to be semester long courses or they are just meant to be self study. They're the uh, it's not as long, maybe, or it's not as wide, the topics at hand that students are meant to be familiar with. But again, what what students need to concentrate on there more is figuring out how to maximize points, especially with written answers, or even being familiar with the formatting of some of the multiple choice. Um, Another question here, this is a good one. Would you say that taking many AP or dual enrollment classes as well as an AP capstone looks better or worse than the full IB diploma? Yeah, Chelsea.
Okay, now in fairness, this was like 20 years ago that I was in the IB program. Um, I'm gonna be honest. I I don't know that it would look significantly better or worse for colleges. I think that I don't know enough about the like admissions review process, I think, to be able to confidently answer that.
I think, yeah, that is certainly a question to bring up more with a college counselor, be that through the school or independently. Um, I will again remind everybody that the APs are supposed to be an indication for you as the student. No, I really like this topic. I'm not just saying it. I want to study it. I want to be able to place out of your introductory level and look, I did all of this studying and I did well on this test. So I don't think that APs serve as well for the broad ranging that maybe a full IB diploma might. Like, again, this is supposed to be the specifics. It's supposed to give an indication of what subject it is you want to major in. This is supposed to give you college credit. Let's not forget about that. So they yeah, I'm hesitant to say for any single one that yes, this is better, this is worse. I would just say that they're meant to do slightly different things. Is that fair, Chelsea?
I think that's fair.
Yeah. Um, the questions are pouring in. Do I have to report all my scores? Can I pick and choose which scores I report to colleges? You are able to. There's two parts to this. You don't have to report all your scores, but I don't know that it's allowed that you send one score off to one college and not to another college.
So I can actually answer
Yeah,
this
please,
particular
please.
question. Like, normally your score report will contain scores from all of the AP exams that you have ever taken, but there is an option to withhold one or more AP exam scores from any particular college, university, or scholarship program that you have chosen as a score recipient. You can look up the specific details on the College Board website for withholding scores. You do have to pay to withhold scores
I
from a
forgot about
particular for
that.
yeah, it does you have to pay to withhold uh uh, scores from individual score recipients. You can, if you want to later for free, choose to release those scores if you want to. You also have to make the request for withholding the score by June 15th of the year that you took the AP exam, that particular exam.
There's your answer. We've got a lot of questions. I'm gonna I'm gonna bundle these together. Um, how do you decide which APs to take and which score on an AP exam constitutes as impressive? Is the language used? Okay, I can take this. It depends on the college, but if you're talking about impressive, a more numerical way of thinking about this is that colleges and universities are not shy about sharing. If you earned a certain score on your test, you will earn such and such amount of college credit, or you'll be able to place out. Um, this was they make this incredibly easy to find. So presumably, there are some that will only look at a 5. Most will look at a 4 or a 5. Some even look at a 3. Again, it depends on the topic, it depends on the college, and it depends how much you want to be placed out of something. Um, how long would it take to self-study? Depends on that. That's so dependent upon which course you're talking about, I'm afraid. Um, there's an interesting one here that if everybody doesn't mind, I'll field. So this student is talking about taking Chinese in elementary and middle school, spent a year in China, but the high school does not offer Chinese. How should I feel confident about taking an AP Chinese test or prepping for the exam? Sit down and take a practice test. You are not alone. I think the languages one is a really all the languages ones are really special. Like you'll have a lot of people who speak the language fluently. Either they've lived there, they have a parent from there, and they don't take the class. But I had one student back in the day who could do the AP German, never took a German class in her life. Her dad was German. She spoke German fluently. All she needed to do was, again, go onto the College Board website, take a look at some past tests, see how you feel, because some of them can be uh, academic in nature quite a lot of the time, like the language and the situations that they use. They'll go through different things. They'll expect you to be able to write, to speak, to listen, to read, and so that they're testing you on all of these at the same time. So the thing I worry a little bit about Chinese specifically is how much more study it takes to be able to read and to write it than to speak it, and that's something that you're having to consider as well with that one. Um, my kid doesn't want to take any AP exams, but I'm forcing them. Is this bad? No, it's not bad. It's not bad. It's called parenting. Um, the I think this turns to a broader question. It's not just AP centric, although APs are a great moment to bring them up, about how much to cajole a teenager into thinking about the college process. And I think that maybe a better question, a better way of thinking about this comes about what is the goal for higher education? It does does the student actually want to participate in higher education? Do they want to study certain things? Um, are they interested? What is their interest level in uh, in different programs, in different majors, in different schools? I would first try to have that conversation with them, because if we start from a place of forcing students to take an AP exam, I do think that that is bad's the wrong word, but I don't think that that will um, see the greatest results, because there is just so much that parents just can't do. There's so much material for these things, whichever one you do. So I think it's worth like asking, what's the goal here, like when you get to college? do you is are you concerned about the level of college that you go to? If it's just they're putting their blinders on and they're nervous about it, this is maybe one sort of chunk to bite off that can actually help build some confidence. So no, I do not think on the whole it's a bad thing, but I more think that these APs can start to open up a conversation about what is it that we want to get out of secondary schools. If I wish to attend an Ivy League, must I take an exam? Like an exam ever? Probably. An AP exam? Um, Again, it's dependent on what's offered, right, Chelsea?
I yes, um not all high schools have, equal amounts of offerings of AP classes. Some offer a lot, and some might offer only a few. And so if you're at a high school that only offers a couple of AP classes and you take all of them and do well in all of them, then fantastic. Um, Whereas if you're at a high school that offers a lot of AP classes, then you'll probably need to take, like, more of those and do well. I would suspect, to be competitive for an Ivy League application.
Yeah, I think it's a question about maximizing opportunities offered to you because they don't just see your transcript, they see what all the offerings are at your school. And so they want to know how far did you run the gamut. So that's I think a more sort of accurate way to respond to the question of like if I want to go to an Ivy League or um, something higher like that, then what do I need to achieve? Um, can I study the AP World History Modern myself? Yes, you can. Um, if you have any kind of grounding in any other histories, that would help. That might be a situation where it would be good to bring on a tutor to work with for a while, especially if there's not a course you're going off of. So there are plenty of resources if you want to. The AP World History is quite a dense one, and it's normally reserved for ninth graders. That's perhaps a bit of an overgeneralization, but it's usually the first of the history APs, and sometimes even the first AP altogether that students run into. It's an interesting question. Isn't there a bias in the AP exams? How do colleges respond to these equity issues? Yeah, we've been addressing some of that as well. First of all, does the school that you're in even offer an AP specific test? Um, some of the language, some of the expectations surrounding how long students can spend studying for these AP exams. Yes, a lot of colleges respond to this. Like, first of all, the APs are not the tests that are weighted the most heavily. I think we said this towards the beginning, but it's still the SAT, ACT. Now, even within the SAT and ACT, there have been some accusations of bias that they've been addressing. Um, but um, some of what we've been, how to phrase this, again, I think I'm happy with what we've said. That what we do know is that colleges and universities will look at what you did as far as the transcript that you have relative to the offerings available to you. Like that is very much part of it, right, Chelsea?
Yes, I that it is something that they will take into consideration.
What's most important, AP exams, ACT, or GPA? GPA. I think that they always, a lot of places do say that. ACT and GPA are sort of both up there, and after that comes AP exams. Is self-studying for 4 AP exams unrealistic? At the same time, probably. That sounds like a lot.
Ambitious, certainly.
That does
Maybe
sound ambitious.
it could also depend on which exams they are and how much of a foundation you have in that particular content already. But I think that it would be ambitious.
Folks, thank you so much for the discussion. That brings us to 9 o'clock. So I will call it. We have to end sometime, so it might as well be now. But thank you all very much for attending this. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm delighted the engagement. I'm delighted the questions that it's brought on. I hope that again we can be a continued resource for you. Thank you all so much. Chelsea, as usual, it's been delightful to get to work with you.
Likewise.
And if anybody needs any other help, we are here. We are absolutely delighted to continue the conversation. So thank you very much. Good luck to everybody, whether you're studying or trying to persuade somebody else to study. Good luck to you.